Gina, for your hospitality, and this shir should be of Aliyah Neshama for Gina's parents, Baruch ben Elio Shmuel and Shana Bas Yitzchak, and Refuah Shlema for all the people we've already mentioned, and for the safe return for all our soldiers and all the hostages. And please God, today is a date 123, and I was talking to Lauren before, as we were coming in, I was just thinking how we're all consumed by this, and how today, we're like in the week of Adar Rishon starting. On Friday and Shabbos is going to be Rosh Chodesh. And it's supposed to be, the Mishnah in Tanis tells us, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. When the month of Adar comes in, we're supposed to be happy. So how does that work? We're just supposed to say, hey, everything's great now, let's start clapping and dance. How does that work? How can we balance our emotions when we're sitting here now? And you can forget because you're doing something, and then 10 minutes later you think about it again. It's just really, really, really awful. So I saw there's a source. It's called Panecha Avakesh. It's not on your sheet. It's Rabbi Shimon Gershon Rosenberg. He passed away in 2007. He was one of the rabbis at Yeshiva HaKotel, and they collected some of his speeches that he wrote. And he says, and I'm just going to read it, he says, Kach masbirim chasidim es havoda shel chodesh Adar. The chasidim, there's a Hasidic idea during the month of Adar that we've got work to do. We've got to try and work out a way to do Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, to be happy. V'hasimcha hi bitui shel spontaneous shel chofesh sheli. Joy is an expression of spontaneity and of my personal freedom. Adam merutza shehu mashuchrar kashetovlo. A person is satisfied when he feels unburdened and things are going well with him. Es hatov hu mabia al yedei simcha va al yedei shira. And a person can express themselves they can express their joy maybe through song or doing joyous activities. And in fact, there's a Rabbi Nachman Mibreslev, who passed away in 1810, he wrote his Sefer Likutei Eitzos, like good ideas on how to do things, and there's like a whole chapter on Simcha, and he says, Mitzvah Gedola Lios B'Simcha. I'm sure we can all think of lots of different songs in that tune, and he says, V'tzarich lehiskaber me'od b'kol ha'kochos sheharchik ha'atzuvos v'hamora shechora. A person has to do everything they can and work hard at it to keep themselves away from depression and aim to be constantly happy. Now, you might say, pre the 7th of October, maybe. I think the world has changed for all of us. Our actual reality, it's like as if we're not breathing in oxygen anymore, we're breathing in oxygen plus the 7th of October. It's like, we just can't. In fact, they call it the 7th of October, some people call it Shabbat HaShachor, the Black Shabbos, Black Sabbath, I think, but anyway, it means depressing. It's like black as in depressing. V'lios asomer tomid. And a person's supposed to be happy always. Sameach, whatever we're going to translate sameach is, maybe joy. V'hu refuah lekol minei cholas. And that is the antidote to lots of different types of illnesses. Ki kol minei cholas bo'in me'atzuvos umora shachora. Because when a person is depressed, a person can get more sad and more depressed, and then you can get physical manifestations. We know people get stomach pain if they're stressed or, depression. I'm not 100% depression is a very real thing, but I'm saying is once a person's got themselves into a depressed state, and I definitely think the first few weeks after the 7th of October, people could hardly get on with their own lives. And then, people got busy doing amazing things like helping people. So they felt like they were doing something positive and contributing in some way to the war effort, so to speak, and to the life of the people in Israel. And he says, "V'sarich lesamech es atzmo b'chol minei eitzos." You've got to find things that make you more happy. And that's not easy. And I'm thinking to myself, we've come from Simchas Torah / Shmini Atzeres for us, because in Chutz La'os it was Shmini Atzeres. How are we going to get ourselves in the mindset of Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha? Before I talk about that, I just want to tell you that I did like a little bit of very quick skimming psychological research, and I did find an article written by an academic article written by someone called Andrew Steptoe. He works in the Department of Behavioural Science and Health at UCL, University College London, and he's written a paper. If anybody wants to look it up, I can send you the link. he says there's a lot of research into the relationships between happiness and health. And he wrote this in 2019. He says, happiness is not only a consequence, impaired happiness is not only a consequence of ill health, but also a potential contributor to disease risk. And they say that. They say that it's actually found to be that there's, and he says, happiness is generally associated with reduced mortality in prospective observational studies. Interesting. If you're interested to find out more about that, I can send you the research paper and you can read it all. I just read the abstract, just being honest. And then we have something in Pirkei Avos. Ezehu osher hasamech b'chelko. Who is rich? Someone who's happy with what they've got. And I'm always going to use the word sameach. We're always going to be thinking about the word simcha. Mishenichnas adam marvin b'simcha. How does a person, a person's rich if they realise what they have. It's not how much money you've got in your bank account, because if I've got, £1,000, I want £2,000 because I've gone on my holiday, but I'm looking forward to my next holiday, or I've bought myself a car, but I want my next car, or I want the same type of car that the other person has. I saw a little video the other day, and it really I really thought about it. It was like a story about a woman was complaining. She was like, I have this, and I don't have that, and I don't have the other person. And so her friend said to her, do you know there's a story of a man. He lived in a tribal village in Africa near the coast, and he used to every day he used to go fishing, and he used to catch 10 fish, and he used to keep 2 for his family, and he used to sell 8, and he had enough money to swap it and do a bit of bartering with the guy who sold milk and the guy who sold apples, and he was happy. So he worked for about 2 hours a day, and he had a good life, and it was all wonderful. And then someone said to him, do you know what? You need to do something. This is what you need to do. You need to buy yourself a boat and get someone to work for you, and you can catch more fish, so then you can earn more money. And he's like, well, why would I want to do that? He goes, because then you don't have to work. He goes, yeah, but that's going to take me 10 or 15 years. I'm going to kill myself to do that. Like now, I'm only working 1 or 2 hours a day. So I think in a way we have in inverted commas, emancipated ourselves, but then we're all worried about our next bills, mortgage, and that stresses us out, because maybe perhaps more simple living where as long as you had enough money to survive and enough food to be able to barter with whatever it is, people had much more free time. I once saw a documentary, I'd love to find it again, about an African guy who was taken, someone took him to America, educated him, and then he became all stressed because he was worried about, he had to have an iPhone and he wanted a computer, because before that he was living in Africa in a tribal village, and he was just happy with his own life. He never had expectations. So I'm not saying let's go back to African tribal, but
there's an article that says that all these time-saving devices and things have basically, all they've done is make our days fuller, because we put more into a day. No, you have to put more into a day because you've got more time, so you put more into a day, so you get more stress. That's basically the thing.
Okay, so let's talk about the word simcha. Doesn't appear that many times in the Torah, mostly in the book of Devarim. I think it's once in Bereshis, once in Shemos or Vayikra. Really very, very, very unusual word, but in Devarim it comes up a lot. And the Sedra, if you want to know what the Sedra about Sameach, is the Sedra of Re'eh, the Parshas Re'eh. So what I've done is your son's bar mitzvah. Okay, so I hope he's a happy boy, right? Well, happy man now. He's probably a dad as well, right? Anyway.
It says at the beginning of the Sedra, key to life, I was telling him, you've landed on the right Sedra. You see, I'm putting before you the good and the bad.
That's
the key to happiness.
Yeah. So what I'm going to give you is, okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to read through sources 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're all from Parshas Devarim, and it's talking about, a lot of it's to do with Yomim Tovim. So we know v'samachta b'chagecha, this idea is v'hayisa ach sameach, that there is a commandment to be happy on the Yomim Tovim, specifically on Sukkot. And just skim through, you can do it in Hebrew or English. What is the common theme between these sources, 7 to 8? I'm going to pause it and then I'm going to put it back together again.
2 to 8.
Okay, so it's always samachta with your household.
Yeah.
What else? Okay, so it's with food, great, with Hashem.
With your slaves.
Okay, with your slaves.
Together.
Together, okay.
Yeah.
Look at number 6, okay. Ata ovincha v'techa v'avtacha v'amasecha v'halevi asher b'sharecha. Of course, the Levium didn't have a portion in the land of Israel. You, your servant, your daughter, your son, your maidservant, your manservant, and the Levi that's in your gate, v'hager, the convert, the stranger, v'hayosam, and the orphan, v'ha'almana asher b'kirbecha. Everyone's inclusive. So let me tell you what Dr. Jonathan Sachs says, source 9 on your sheet in his Covenant and Conversation 2019. Anybody want to read it? Number 9? I'm just warning you, it goes over the page in case you think it's a short one.
Simcha is usually translated as joy, rejoicing, gladness, happiness, pleasure, or delight. In fact, Simcha has a nuance untranslatable into English. Joy, happiness, pleasure, and the like are all states of mind, emotions. They belong to the individual. We can feel them alone. Simcha, by contrast, is not a private emotion. It means happiness shared. It is a social state, a predicate of we, not I. There is no such thing as feeling simcha alone.
Okay? When you think about it, you're like, that's so obvious, but we need Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs, the Chorah Levracha, to bring it to our attention, okay?
And we say we invited to a simcha. You don't say you're invited to a party.
Okay.
You go to a simcha.
Okay, so the Rambam tells us, how do we generate simcha? What is it that we need to have in order to have simcha? How do we create this joy? So he writes this in his Mishnah Torah, and it's about the halachos of how we rest on Yomim Tovim. And this is what he says, source 10 on your sheet. Hakatanim nosen lahem kloyos ve'egozim umigodonos. You have to give children like little seeds, nuts and sweets, like little nice nuts, sweets. Okay, now I've underlined this. If anybody wants to take this home and stick it on their fridge, that's absolutely fine. Vahanoshim, for women, what do they want? I'm not the type, but anyway, whatever. Konelahem begodim v'tachshitim noim kafi mamono. You have to buy your wife. It's a Rambam says, it's halacha. It's the halacha. No. You can make a fridge magnet. I've underlined it, and I can send it to you. Okay, I'm not being funny. That is what you're supposed to do. You're loving this, right? Okay, you're supposed to. A man is supposed. I love it. It's written to a man. This is one of the sources I love. That's written to a man. Women, you should buy them clothes, jewelry according to your financial means. V'hanoshim, no, for Yom Tov. V'hanoshim, and for men, ochlim bosov v'shosin yayin. She'ein simcha elo bebosov ve'ein simcha elo b'yayin. What do men want? They want a nice meat and they want wine. Okay. This is what the Rambam wrote 800 years ago. He got it. He understood. Okay, I just say, okay, it depends who. Some women like meat and wine. And some don't really like outfits and whatever. I actually like the sweets. But anyway. Okay. Kashahu ochel v'shoseh chayav laha'achil lageh v'layosam v'la'almona. And when you're eating, don't be busy eating by yourself. Think about feeding people who are converted, to orphans and to widows. Im shaha'aniyim v'ha'am umlalim. You also have to care about people who are downtrodden, who it's difficult for them, people who are, I'm sorry, I missed out a line in English. When you're busy, if you're eating, don't be busy eating by yourself in your own house. Very, very nice. Shut the door. I couldn't care less about anyone else. Aval mishe noel dal sos chatzero va'ochel v'shoseh hu uvonov v'ishto ve'eno ma'achil u'mashke la'aniyim. If you're going to eat, stuff your face, and you care about your own family, your wife and your children, without caring about the poor people, la'aniyim u'lamorei nefesh, and people who are embittered soul, ein zu simchas mitzvah ela simchas kreso. This is, you only care about the happiness of your stomach. Okay? You do not care about other people. And so what Rabbi Jonathan Sachs says at the top of the page, which is the end of source 9, is, who wants to read it? The 4 lines, yeah? Okay.
The second bit of this.
Yeah. What Moshe?
What Moshe is articulating for the first time is the idea of simcha as communal, social, and national rejoicing. The nation was to be brought together not just by crisis, catastrophe, or impending war, but by collective celebration in the presence of God. The celebration itself was to be deeply moral. Not only was this a religious act of thanksgiving, it was also to be a form of social inclusion. No one was to be left out, not the stranger or the servant or the lonely, the orphan or the widow.
Okay, it's so meaningful. And when you see what the Rambam says, he's just, Jonathan Zach saying is like, the word simcha means communal joy. So,
Can I just add to that?
yeah.
I'm vulnerable share. I'm divorced and I think it's the same. I think divorcees are the same category. People don't always realise to reach out. I'm lucky, I'm very blessed, I've got family. How many single friends I have. And Shabbos after Shabbos, I have to call around and see, oh my gosh, she's available. It would be so much nicer for the community to think, who's in my area who's not with someone for Shabbos? Let me just call. Even if they say no, the call means so much. Just want to put it out there. Married people should know what it means.
Definitely. And also singles.
Don't mind.
No, it's absolutely not. Singles, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or young students who don't live near with their family. Okay, so I'm going to carry on reading what Jonathan Sachs says. It's just not on your sheet, so I couldn't give the whole sheet. But I can send you the link to the article. It's amazing, okay? Moshe's insight remains valid today. The West is more affluent than any previous society has ever been. Our life expectancy is longer, our standards of living higher, our choices wider than any time since Homo sapiens walked on the earth. Yet Western societies are not measurably happier. Most telling indices of unhappiness, drug and alcohol abuse, depressive illness, stress-related syndromes and eating disorders and the rest have risen by between 300 and 1,000% in the space of 2 generations.
Wow.
Okay? He says, our contemporary consumer is constructed in the first person singular. I want, I need, I must have. There are many things that we can achieve in the first person singular, but the one we cannot, namely simcha, is because simcha is the joy we share, the joy we have only because we share. Thus, Moshe spoke to the Bnei Yisrael before they entered the lands, and he said, this is going to be your challenge. Suffering, persecution, a common enemy unite a people and turn it into a nation. But freedom, affluence, we have this idea of affluenza, we're ill with affluenza, and security turn a nation into a collection of individuals. Once we have security and safety and freedom, we all care about ourselves. We suddenly forget we, each pursuing his or her own happiness, often indifferent to the fate of those who have less, the lonely, the marginal, and the excluded. When that happens, societies start to disintegrate. At the height of their good fortune, the long, slow process of decline begins. The only way to avoid it, says Moshe, is to share your happiness with others, and it is in the midst of that collective national celebration we have to serve God. Blessings are not measured by how much we own or earn or spend or possess, but by how much we share. Simcha is the mark of a sacred society. It is a place of collective joy. And I think to myself, that's just like astonishing. And it's just, it's astonishing.
Who's Moshe?
Pardon me?
Moshe
It's Jonathan Chatsteth wrote this. And I think to myself, I know it's like funny, but here's my iPhone, my iPad. Everything's got an I in front of it. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything's got an I in front of it. We have to change our society from I to we. So this is very weird, but I've been thinking a lot because I was actually in America on Simchas Torah / Shmini Atzeres for me. And on Shmini Atzeres, because there wasn't Shabbos Chol HaMoed, we laned the Megillah of Koheles. And I just kept thinking to myself, how can we balance our emotions about how we feel currently about what's going on in Israel, and especially now when we're supposed to be going into Adar, Mishenichnas Adar. And I thought, where should we go to? But Koheles, that was the day. That's where I was in shul. And we already knew when we read Koheles, and I sat there reading Koheles with tears in my eyes, what's the purpose of life? Things like that. So I thought we'd just look at chapter 3, Perek Gimel, just Lakol Zman Va'es. There's a time for everything. Okay, so what I want you to do, you can do it together, in pairs, or whatever it is, look at this, and I've tried to translate it the best I can, but obviously it's not perfect translation. Any translation is an interpretation. And tell me, what would you have added to the list? What do you think is not so important on the list? What do you think, if we're making the assumption, Eis lo ledes for Eis lo mus, a time to be born and a time to die, are we saying those are opposites? Do you think they really are opposites? And we could say a time to be born, it could be a time to give birth. You have to be a bit more, I had to make a translation. And just like what your thoughts are. Whatever your thoughts are, your thoughts. There's no right or wrong answer about what Koheles says. I hope everybody's had a bit of chance to look at Koheles Gimel. Right, La Kolzman Va'es. Va'es L'chol Chayfetz. There's a time, and there's loads of songs. I mean, I can send you all the, I mean, there's most, and also English ones. What's it called? The Birds. A time. Right, okay, so there's loads and loads of things. Okay, so thoughts. Miriam, do you want to say something? No? Okay. Do you want to say something? Valerie? Whatever you say is right, because it's your interpretation of what are you thinking when you read this?
It's interesting that it says a time to hate, because you would think, be a Jew, don't hate people, look for the good.
Okay, but maybe sometimes it's appropriate to hate someone.
Yeah, and a time to kill. But that time to kill is a bit, it contradicts the Ten Commandments.
Right, but we do have a mitzvah to kill Amalek, for example. And if someone comes to kill you, you must get up and defend yourself. And now we're in this terrible situation now, because do you think any soldier really wants to kill someone? I mean, I was watching an interview, like an Israeli politician was being interviewed, and he's like, well, you just killed like 20,000 Gazans. Of course we don't want to. We don't want to kill these people. We don't have a choice. If we don't kill them, people are going to come. We have to defend our security. Okay?
We love life.
We can't forgive them for killing our children.
Yeah.
We can't forgive them for turning our
Making
sons
our
into
sons.
ours.
Making our sons kill them.
So the thought I had is like now, it's like we're having to, and on Sukkot we have to hold both experiences at one time, the sadness and the happiness. I can't remember who says this, but there are different chambers of the heart.
Really?
I wish I could remember the source. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I agree, the concept is, time is really an illusion anyway. And the Jews were compared to the sand and the stars. That's something I've been thinking about very recently.
Oh, it's like at a wedding, you break a glass, isn't
Right,
it? You know.
Right, of course. Imesh Kochech Yerushalayim, Al Rosh Simchasi.
Exactly, Al Rosh Simchati.
At the head of my happiness, you put ashes on the head of the bridegroom to remember that we don't have the Beis Hamikdash.
Out with on the Seder night, you don't drink a full cup.
Yeah.
And I think the symbolic pinnacle of that was, like, as you said, I don't know if everybody here knew on Sunday Torah what happened. I was here, but I did because I've got Israeli neighbours who are in touch. And I went to a shul, nobody knew, and everyone was dancing, and I was thinking, like, and I just carried on dancing.
Because I was in America, we were 7 hours ahead, and people did know. So by the time we found out, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon in
I
Israel.
knew already in the morning, and so what happened was I went to shul knowing, and I didn't know, shall I tell people, shall I not tell people? People were already starting to know. But they knew, but they didn't know. They knew something had happened. They didn't know.
I know, but in Israel, they didn't really know anything. Even in Israel, when they were people living in Sderot, they didn't even know what was happening.
But what I'm saying is I was in shul the same time as you, like also with the same idea as you, every single word in the Torah was so resonant. Not only Koheles, but also the readings that you do on some Torah with all the tribes.
I know,
So Levi, I give you this, to Reuben, I give you that. I am behind you, don't be afraid, I'm fighting with you in all your wars. And it's like, the Simcha took on a whole new meaning because of the pain. It's like the deepest pain can give us the greatest connection, almost. Like, we have to turn to God and despite it all, bring that connection to Him and say, even here we believe, It's such a challenge.
It's incredible that you have to hold that all alone, that you couldn't share it with anybody, and that's like what touches me. Like,
I was in America, I had my daughter who was 14, and I knew that it's 2 days Yontif. And so I was in Elisheva's house, and I didn't want her to find out. So we just didn't speak about it. Can you imagine? We were all sitting there, like, not speaking for like 36 hours, not at all speaking about it. We didn't want her to overhear it, or because she didn't go to shul in the morning, and I didn't want her to hear it. So I thought to myself, she was alone except for us. So I didn't want her to be that she's got no friends or no distraction. It was very hard, and even holding it in, knowing, because we already knew that by then. Some people that were security guards shul already told us, and because it was so much later, we were sleeping when it all happened. By the time we woke up and went to shul, we knew what had happened. People already being called up. The rabbi spoke. His sermon was different. It was just different. Did you want to say something, Gina? Oh. No?
I wanted to share also that the soldiers understood that so viscerally, and they went into war dancing, and they're dancing with Sefer Torahs, and they're dancing with their tzitzit, and that has been such an inspiration to me to see people who were maybe disconnected before, but their connection, it's like a pilot light went on. So in that pain, they're bringing simcha. They're not only going and saying, okay, I'll do it because of Shem, literally dancing. I feel that's really strong and powerful. But the to be able to have the capacity to hold
Both.
both.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a minute to look at it in Hebrew and look at it in English. And there's like a real pattern there. It's eis laledes ve'eis lamus. Eis litas ve'eis la'akon otua. So now sometimes it's got like a third word, but there's an obvious
Rhythm.
rhythm and there's an obvious change in the rhythm. It's like all of them are the same except for 2 lines. It works in English or Hebrew because I translated it really well to make it be noticeable.
Yeah. So most of the time it says 2 and then 2 of them says 4.
Okay, but look at the
Those
Hebrew.
stories.
Look at the Hebrew, okay? So if you look at Dalad, Ace Saphod, the Ace Rakod. Why doesn't it say Ace Lispod, the Ace Lirkod? There's a time for eulogizing and there's a time for dancing. And the last one is Ace Milchama, or maybe it should be Ace Lehilachem, a time to fight, the Ace Lahashlim, Lehiyot B'Shalom, or something like that. Is that not, now you're going to think, how did I never notice that before? Well, I have to be honest, I was not the person that noticed that. The person who brought this to my attention was Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, because I was, on that day, in Boca Raton Synagogue. And he said, and I think to myself, he couldn't have written the speech before, so he had to say it on the day. And he said, we are sitting here. Tonight is going to be Simchas Torah. And even though we know that so many people have died, we are living, we have to balance our emotions. We have to dance with the Torah with all our heart, and we have to be Simchas Torah. We have to have a joyous relationship with the Torah at the same time as we know people have died. We know so many people have died. We know in Eretz Yisrael people are burying their dead. There were people there who were in the army who knew that the next day they were going to get dressed and go on a plane and go and join the war effort. How does a person go into shul and dance like Simchas Torah when they know their nephew, brother, son, grandson? There was one man in shul, he said, I've got 8 grandsons in the army. Who were in the army serving, not that they were getting called up in Baloo and we weren't aware. He said that, and I'm like thinking to myself, and he's so far away, and he's 7. And not only that, you have to wait for the whole of the day and the whole of the next day in order to phone.
But can I ask something? It's just like, for me, I find it really, in the moment, the challenges, it calls you forward, that courage, your fire rises from your belly. It's like, I will be joyful even when, my people are together.
So what
And
Rabbi...
But afterwards, and the soldiers come home and they're wounded, and it's days, and it's days, and it's days. How do you maintain that?
Yeah, because you've got the excitement, or you want to resist, you want to be
You wake
victorious.
up in the morning, it just seems so, it's been so long, it seems to never end, it seems so hopeless.
123
That
days.
is where I struggle,
So I'm just going back to these differences in the words. I'm not sure I really understand why those ones are like present participles kind of thing.
I'm going to explain that now.
Why only those 2? Because the other ones I feel there should be as well.
Okay, because what Rabbi Goldberg said is those are things that you have to do at the same time. It's not a time to do this. Sometimes there's a time when you're crying and there's sometimes a time you're laughing. But we have to find a way within ourselves to be able to rejoice, to have simcha at exactly the same time as we are eulogizing the dead. And we also have a time when we are fighting, but we always, at the same time, we want peace. He says those are almost, there's not a time for this and a time for that. It's a time, we are always, in the present participle, we are always doing it. And I think to myself, what came to my mind is in Vayikra, the day of the, what I call Mishkan dedication day, the 1st of Nisan, 2448. And Aaron had to be there and be the Kohen Gadol working in the Mishkan at the day when his sons had died. And it says Vayidom Aaron. He was just quiet. It's just heartbreaking to think like that. So now what I want to do is I've got my able assistant on the left here. I literally cannot stop thinking about Rav Doron Peretz, who's the head of Mizrahi, who's a South African. And he had a situation where one of his sons got shot and he got home from the army, and that boy was going to get married. At the same time, and still today, we are davening that Daniel Shimon ben Sharon should come home. They don't know where he is, and they were like, should we make the wedding? should we not make the wedding? In the end, they decided they don't know what's going to happen. What's she going to do? Never let his son get married? So it was with very short time, maybe within 2 weeks after the 7th of October, his son was injured, he got shot, so he walked down to the chuppah with, he was well enough to get married. And this is the words of Rav Doron Perez. Can I have your face again? Okay, so I put the link on here. So the link on here on the left-hand side, if you'd like to try and take a photo of the QR code, you can get to this. He recorded this. It's already 3 months ago, and this is the words of Rav Doron Perez himself, saying, how did he manage to be at his child's wedding dancing and at the same time knowing that he doesn't know where his son Daniel is? Okay, this is his words.
So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point, a lot of people have asked me, and again, I don't know how, I think these things just happen themselves, is how are you able to be genuinely happy and incredibly concerned and sad at the same time? How can you celebrate with one son, knowing, God forbid, what's happening with another son? I said, I don't know. I just know that in the laboratory of life, things happen that the mind can't always understand. Things often don't make sense rationally. All of Jewish existence doesn't make sense rationally, but it happened. Sometimes, but it happened. So it doesn't make sense, but it's happened. I don't know. But I can just say that I have seen that it is possible to hold conflicting thoughts at the same time and to celebrate and to be incredibly concerned at the same time. That day that Roiza Batani, my son's commander, came to tell us what was going on with Yonatan.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there, but he's given a few interviews, and this boy has been missing for 123 days. I can't. How did he do that? How did they find the courage within themselves? But I think that's always the courage of the Jewish spirit. We have to always pick ourselves up, because we're always in a flux of Eis Milchama, Eis Shalom, Eis Safod, Eis Rakod. And it's hard also to go to somebody else's wedding and you have to go there despite what you feel inside. And I had simchas to go to, and I thought, make a special effort. We have to get up and we have to still celebrate life. And some people at the beginning, they were like, oh, I don't want to go out, I don't want to go out to eat, but I think we do need to live. We have to invite guests and we have to integrate ourselves back into society, even though it's a very, very, very challenging time. And I also
think it's interesting, to be present in both those things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not, I'm just I have a week of shivers and weddings, and I'm just thinking
you're going from a shiver to a wedding.
Well, be present in this person just lost her father, that is what's happening right now. And then tomorrow there's going to be, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, my sister.
Or 10 minutes later.
But I'm saying, to really be in it also, not just to zombie through it, to feel it.
So I'm like, my sister's also an example. She's a rabbi's wife, and she's going always from shiva to, and she has to be literally dropped into it. So for me, in my day, what I do find helps, I don't know if it'll help anyone else here, but I boundary it. So in the morning, I say my davening and tehillim, and that's where I really let my emotions out, and then once I'm mincha time about then. And then the rest of the day, I try and put it on my mind on it. If a feeling comes up, I'm like, yeah, at 7:15, I'm gonna leave it till then. You can't always do that, but at least you have to really. Otherwise, you're wasting. You're not here, not there.
It also helps, I understand that the simcha is like a shared joy, but you think it also helps to have that shared joy when you're able to share the pain.
Definitely.
Because I think when these national disasters, I feel that it's so much because people are coming together with shared pain.
We haven't seen more unity than we have in the whatever divisions that were, on the 6th of October. It's also thank you Hamas, you brought Am Yisrael together. Achdus has never been greater. It's scary. I also think a lot about Rachel Goldberg-Polin. I have to say, every time I watch her, she looks thinner and more withdrawn, and I'm thinking to myself, and she's put that sticker on her, Hirsch Goldberg's mother, so she knows that her son has lost one arm, and he was with Anya Shapira in the Nova Festival.
I actually said to Rabbi Perez, because I was just at a wedding with him in Israel, and he really gave so much temper to the family you know, he went up to he made like a Sheva bracha, and he really like showed such. And I said to him, Rabbi Perez, what it just must take of you to be able to put your own pain aside and to be misameach for the family is just, it's heroic.
Well, I heard
And
that.
actually, he said it. He said it is. It's very difficult, but he knows he's got the mental capacity, and he's cerebral enough to be able to overcome it.
I heard the story of when Leo D, unfortunately, we know, and that was at Pesach, right? So that happened on Chol Hamoed Pesach, and he was in shul, and it was going to be Hallel, and apparently just before Hallel, he walked up to the Shliach Tzibor, the Chazan, and he said something in his ear, and he said, "You've got to make it happy." And I'm like thinking to myself, how is that humanly possible to sing Hallel with all your heart, and for him to get up and say, "Of course, everybody here we are shattered and we are heartbroken, but we have to get up, and it's Yontov, and we have to have Simcha, and we have to have Simcha together and make it happy." And I'm like, how does he do that?
It's like the pasuk that says, "V'charta v'chayim." That like you have a choice, and I think.
Okay, but it's difficult. It's difficult. I'm definitely thinking it's
Also, you
difficult.
have the hope. You know that it will go. It will calm down. Something positive will come out of it. So.
Okay, so I'm going to go on with the hope now. Even though I was going to talk about something else, I'm going to go with the hope. And if you look at source 13, in Yecheskel, we read the Haftorah. We read the Haftorah about the valley of the dry bones, and we say, Yovshu atzmosenu va'ovda tikvatenu. Our bones are dried and our hope is lost, but the bones do come back together again. And I think that is, according to Jonathan Sachs said it once, and he says, those are the roots, in inverted commas, when they made up the song of Hatikva, Odlo avda tikvatenu. We must never, ever give up hope. Hatikva but shnot alpayim. It's a 2,000-year-old hope that we are going to come and be reunited. And I absolutely, I googled, like Kol Zman Va'es and Ace Safod, Ace Rakod, because I was trying to find the source. I knew Rabbi Goldberg said it, and I asked him, he said he doesn't actually remember where he once read it, so unfortunately I don't know exactly where it comes from. And I googled it, and there was this painting, which I put here, and I must have copied and pasted it. It's by an artist, an Israeli artist. Her name's Tamar Young, or Jung, I don't know what her name is. And if you can see, there's like a bride who's sort of getting ready, but then there's like this figure in the darkness, and she calls her painting Ace Safod Va'es Rakod, like it's a time for dancing and a time for eulogizing. And I don't know when she made it, but if you Google, I put the QR code, you can find it yourself. And she calls her painting, in our human eyes, it seems as if death and mourning are the complete opposites of joy and dance. But life teaches us that sometimes it's precisely from the heartfelt prayer that can emerge from moments of darkness that a much greater salvation than expected becomes possible. In the painting, you can see a figure in the dark holding onto a bride, which is revealed in all her beauty. And then in Bournemouth, if anybody ever goes to Kingston Lacey, I'm sure you've been there, haven't you? It's Kingston Lacey, you know, into Kingston Lacey? National Trust, absolutely beautiful.
Oh, do you mean the art gallery?
No, it's a National Trust house, okay? The people who owned it, sold it, gave it to the National Trust because they probably didn't want to pay to renovate it, okay? It's a very famous painting, and apparently it's the painting that was... Barack Obama wrote his biography, Hope. It's a picture of a woman who's blind, and she's got a lyre with like nearly all the strings have gone, but she's sort of sitting there, barefoot and blindfolded female figure is sitting on a globe playing a lyre which has only one remaining string. Okay?
Maybe lyre is a good title for an
Separate issue. So Miriam, you took away my beautiful crescendo of my ending, is that even though we're sitting in this time of tears, but we have to carry on with Odla Avda Tikvatenu. And I just want to tell you something that I found, as a friend of mine showed me yesterday, this poem. It's a response to Koheles. The poem's written in Hebrew. It's not on your sheet, but I can send it to you. It's called Odom B'Chayav, and it's written by by Yehuda Amichai, who's like an Israel poet, and he passed away only in the year 2000. And he says, Odom B'Chayav ein lo zman sheyer lo zman lakol. A man in his life doesn't always have the time to have the time for everything. Ve'en lo ace, shetieh lo ace. And sometimes he's got no time, sometimes time's got no time for him, and he hasn't got time. L'chol chayfetz, for everything he wants to do. Koheles lo tzadak kasher amakach. Koheles wasn't right when he said that. Adam sarich lisno v'le'ahov b'bas achad. A man needs to love and to hate at the same moment. Ba'oson einayim livkos va'oson einayim lischok. He has to cry and laugh with the same eyes. Ba'oson yadayim lizrok avonim. With the same hands he has to throw stones. Va'oson yadayim le'asofoson. With the same hands he needs to collect stones. La'asos ahava ba'milchama u'milchama ba'ahava. Has to make love in war and war in love. Lisno v'lisloach v'lisko v'lishkoach. To hate and to forgive, to remember and to forget. Ulesadeh, ulebalbel, uleachol, la'akel. To arrange and confuse and to eat and digest. Esma shehistoria aruka ose b'shanim rabos ma'od. What a long history. This has been going on for many, many years. Anyway, the poem's a bit longer, but the fact is, I think that sums up our situation and our sentiments right now. And I am very, very happy that we are in a state of so much good. Literally, I don't remember a time where people have come together, and that has been amazing. But we are still in so much pain. But we are also supposed to have joy. But we have to remember, our joy is tempered by the pain we're in, but we have to nevertheless have joy. And the way we express ourselves through joy is by not doing things by ourselves and, self-indulgence, but always thinking about the other. And of course, this group, headed ably by Shira and Gina, who are role models of showing what it means like to be people who care about other people, always constantly thinking about other people. I remember what you did, that whole collection thing in your house. Everybody was there, hands on deck when it was the Ukrainian refugees. And now for Israel, what people have done. So please God, we should all be very, very, very busy, and we should find ourselves in a time of peace. Shalom.